welcome to Class 9 English Supplementary Reading Lesson 1 The Goat and the Stars by H.E. Bates. The author, Herbert Ernest Bates, was born on 16th May 1905 and died on 29 January 1974. What is the story The Goat and the Stars all about? A young farm boy innocently misinterprets a church announcement regarding Christmas Eve gifts. No gift too large, none too small. Give generously, this means you. And brings his favorite kid goat as an offering, only to be met with laughter. The story was included in a BBC radio broadcast on Christmas Eve in 1939. In The Beauty of the Dead and Other Stories, 1940, 20 Tales, 1951, and was reprinted in World Digest in December 1951, English and American Short Stories of Today, too, in 1986. So let's begin reading the story. Every morning when he came into the town, he would see this large notice in blue and scarlet letters on a board outside the church. It had been there since a month before Christmas. Annual collection of Christmas gifts in this church on Christmas Eve. Help us to help others. No gift too large, none too small. Give generously. And then, in a very much larger, angry letters, this means you. He was a small boy with a look of determination on his thin lips. Large brown trousers gave him a curious look of being shown off with sheep shears. There was always mud on his boots, and there were times when he did not smell very sweet. There was reason for the smell. His father and mother had a small farm of about 10 acres, 2 miles out in the country. On a little pasture they grazed a mare and 2 or 3 cows, a score of hens, and a dozen goats. It was because of the goats that the boy had that smell. He was very fond of the goats, and it was his job to graze them every morning and bring them back to the pigsty again before darkness fell. He treated the goats like friends. He knew that they were his friends. At frequent intervals, the number of goats was increased, but his father could never sell the kids or even give them away. Now they had 13 goats. The odd one a kid of 6 weeks, all white, as pure as snow. Every morning when he went by the church, the notice made him uneasy. It was the larger letters, "This means you," that troubled him. As Christmas came near, he worried more about it. The notice seemed to hit him in the face. It singled him out from the rest of the world. "This means you." He began to think if there was anything he could do about it. He felt that he had to do something. The notice made him feel as if it were watching him. Gradually, he began to feel that in addition to the notice, God too was watching him. In a way, God and the notice were one. It was not until the day before Christmas Eve that he decided to give the goat kid to the church. He woke up with a decision. It was as if it had been made for him, and he knew that there was no escaping it. He had already grown deeply fond of the little goat, and it seemed to him a very great thing to sacrifice. That day there was no school, and he spent most of the afternoon in the pigsty, kneeling on the straw floor, combing the delicate milky hair of the little goat with a horse comb. In the sty, the smell of goats was strong, but he did not notice it. It had long since penetrated his body and whatever clothes he wore. By the time he finished brushing and combing the goat, he felt extremely proud and glad of it. He did not know what other people would give. No gift was too great, nor too small. Perhaps people would give things like oranges and nuts, or toys and Christmas trees, but no one else would give what he was giving. Something small and beautiful and living that was his friend. When the goat kid was ready, he tied a piece of clean string round his neck. Its plan for taking it down into the town was simple. Every Christmas Eve he had to go and visit an aunt who kept a small corner grocery store in the town. This aunt would give him a box of dates for his father, a box of chocolates for his mother, and some sort of present for himself. All he had to do was to take the kid with him under cover of darkness. It was so light that he could carry it in his hands. He got down into the town just before 7 o'clock. When the goat grew tired of walking, he would carry it in his arms. Only one thing troubled him. He did not know what the procedure at the church would be. There might, he imagined, be a long sort of desk with men in charge. He would go to this desk and say very simply, "I have brought this," and come away. He was rather frightened to find the windows of the church full of light. He saw people carrying parcels going through the door. He saw the notice, "This means you." He felt slightly nervous as he stood on the other side of the street with the kid at his side like a little dog. Finally, when there were no more people going into the church, he decided to go in. When he went into the church, he was surprised to find it almost full of people. There was already a sort of service in progress. He sat hastily down at the end of a pew. He saw at the other end of the church a reconstruction of the manger and child and the wise men who had followed the moving star. The stable and manger reminded him of the pigsty where the goats were kept. His first impression was that it would be a good sleeping place for the kid. He sat for some minutes before anything happened. The clergyman was talking of the grace of giving. They, he said, brought frankincense and myrrh. You cannot bring frankincense, but what you have brought as a sweeter smell, the smell of sacrifice for others. As he spoke, a man immediately in front of the boy turned to his wife, sniffing and then whispering, "Funny smell of frankincense." "Yes," she whispered. She too was sniffing now. "I noticed it, but didn't like to say." They began to sniff together like dogs. After some moments, the woman turned and saw the boy and the goat in his arms. "Look round," she said. The man turned, and now he too saw the goat. "Well," he said, "well, no wonder." "I wanted to give the goat," the boy said. "Yes, I know," the man said, "but you got the wrong idea. A goat's no use to anybody." The boy walked down the steps of the church into the street, the goat quiet now in his arms. He did not look at the notice which had said for so long, "This means you." It was clear to him now that he had made a sort of mistake. It was clear that the notice did not mean him at all. Outside the town he walked slowly in the darkness. The night air was silent and the kid seemed almost asleep in his arms. He was now not troubled that they did not want the goat. He was already glad that it would be his again. It was only about some other things that he was troubled. He had for a long time believed that at Christmas there must be snow on the ground, bells ringing, and a moving star. But now there was no snow on the ground, there were no bells ringing, and far above him and the little goat the stars were still.